So I wanted to find a jack in the box for this opener, just winding and winding to demonstrate the suspense that a hardcore silver stacker must have been living through the past 13 years. It turns out I don't have one, and I'm afraid that if I were to go look for one, the whole thing might happen while I'm out. We're going to give silver its 15 minutes. I think it's due. At $58 an ounce, silver is up 100% year to date. I've been going on about how impressive gold's 62% year to date rally is, how impressive it is that it doubled in 2 years. Well, silver did it in half that time. And really, silver's story today at $58 is just as compelling to me as it was when I talked about it last year at $27. The difference this time is that these moves could really happen a lot faster. We're going to get into that further, but before we do, quick shout out to Summit Metals. If you're looking for gold and silver, they've got you covered. If you're looking to sell your gold and silver, they can help you there too. SummitMetals.com. Before we get too deep here, though, we need to start in the woodshed because silver is complicated. Silver's performance has sucked for 4 solid years. Now, if you're a long-time silver bull, you know this. You might not want to admit it, but it lived up to none of its hype in 2021, 2022, 2023, or 2024. Now, that doesn't mean that accumulating it over that time was a bad idea. It just didn't make any of the moves that we were constantly hearing were coming right around the corner. Now, none of this is meant to be negative, and before somebody says, well, hey, you just don't get silver, let me give some backstory. I have been explaining specifically why I wasn't excited about silver a few times over those 4 years. Now, that started with my decision to sell it in August of 2020, and I did that at a price of $29 an ounce. Now, before we all laugh at that decision and ask, how'd that work out for you? Well, I bought a lot of that silver back almost exactly 4 years later at a price of $27 an ounce. So it worked out fine. And in the interim, I had picked up Bitcoin and ETH with the capital from selling that silver, and between them, they went up more than 1,000%. Now, honestly, that part of the story isn't something I enjoy telling because it feels like I have to defend an 11x return. It's kind of weird, but it explains the idea that silver has performed best for me when I've treated it like a trade. Now, that part needs a little bit more detail. Nobody watching this channel will be surprised to learn that I prefer gold as a long-term hold. I'm not into metals to trade, to flip for quick profits, and I do like to have a little bit of physical silver in the back of the safe, regardless of how it's performing. But buying silver in scale does have its quirks. Quirks starting with high premiums. It has higher acquisition costs than gold by a lot, really. So that's just a reality. Another is that if you want it to represent a significant percentage of a portfolio, well, it's going to take 100 times more space than gold, not 10 times 100. And then there's its history of long periods of price dormancy, like I was just talking about, and then short periods of volatility, which we're in right now. One of them is exciting, one of them is not. Now, in the middle of that, it's all unpredictable. That spans all of it, so it's hard to think of silver as a stable asset just for savings. So I mentioned we're in the volatile stage of silver, the fun time. The last time we had this level of excitement with silver was the 2011 rally, and if you treated silver as a trade through that rally, you probably did extremely well. I did not. And if you took it one step further and if you bought all the way into that run through the 2011 spike and then you held through a huge price drop, losing 70% of the value, well, you know full well that it took 12 years to recover. We just got that done this year, and that's if we're not adjusting for inflation, because silver would have been about $70 in that run in 2011 if we adjusted for inflation. Now, the not exciting part is what happened here from 2014 to 2019. Ask me how I know, right? Well, I had a fair amount of silver at that time, and it hadn't done anything since giving up around 70% of that value after that 2011 spike until 2020. Now, I wasn't buying above $30 or so, $35 with premium, but I was well aware of what was happening with price and well aware of my average cost. So by the time we saw price nearing $30 again in August of 2020, I was ready to sell. So again, backstory. If you time silver right, you can pull off pretty impressive wins. The problem here is that these opportunities build over decades. So if you've stuck with silver all this time, you've been waiting since 2013, and prior to that, it was 1980. This kind of thing just doesn't happen often, maybe 2 or 3 times in a lifetime. So far, at least. Well, this is one of those times. So what do? Well, I can't tell you. A lot of people are out there saying what's coming, telling you to get on the bus, and maybe some are right, but I am just never going to tell you what to do. I do like playing along though, so I have some physical silver and I have some ETF positions. The reason for the ETF positions is pretty simple. You just can't really play the trades with physical silver at scale. Now hold on, I'm not saying don't buy physical metals. Like I said, I like having some, but this is where my view on gold and silver is very different. $100,000 in gold takes less than 24 ounces today. It's a mint tube and a few loose coins, but $100,000 in silver is close to 1,800 ounces. And as you can see on the desk here, 1 ounce of silver takes up more room than 1 ounce of gold. So logistically speaking, the two are very different. Now, I've talked about a goal of 100 ounces of gold, big number, I know. And don't worry, this is just a visual representation. It's not all here. Think of this as retirement levels. It would be pretty easy to have this stored at a vault, at a bank, at your own property, whatever you want to do. But over the years, the comparable amount of silver would have been around 20 monster boxes. Like that's if you bought uniform coins, tightly packed in mint tubes, and then stored in those monster boxes. But most people with thousands of ounces of physical silver are going to have it in lots of different forms and formats, which compounds the issue. So storing 20 monster boxes of silver is a huge logistical consideration. But then storing that same amount in mixed formats, bars and rounds, whatever you have, is even worse. So either way, though, silver is a lot more difficult to store, move, or sell than gold is if we're doing it at scale. Now, maybe you're saying, I don't need $400,000 in silver to be in the game. And now we're getting to the distinction that I make when I say at scale. What might seem like a negative impression of silver is really just a negative impression of holding a ton of physical silver. Now, I have a few hundred ounces of physical silver. I like having that amount. But if I wanted to try to time a top or swap that to gold at some certain level, doing that with a few hundred ounces of silver is feasible. It's pretty easy. But that's probably at the upper end of anything that I would want to move. Beyond that, I'd rather be clicking buttons in a trading app and then leaning on gold as my long-term hold. Now, why am I even talking about silver as a trade? Why not just be happy at $58 and move on, right? Well, I've mentioned a few times that the difference between $60 silver and $80 silver might not be as dramatic as you'd think. Meaning a run to $80 could sneak up on us while we're watching for a run to $60. Now, the reason that I point this out is that the market cap of silver is only 1/10 the size of gold. So trading activity has an outsized effect on it, meaning momentum can hit quickly. Now, the 60 to 80 possibility is just that. It's a possibility. But if that's the game that you're playing, wanting to profit from a quick spike, you need to be ready for it. You need to know what you intend to do, because the last time silver made a run like this, it gave up 70% following that run up in price. And in the 80s, it gave up even more than that. Now, even that bit of history is not meant to be negative on silver. Even though it fell, it's more to show just how exciting it can get when it actually starts to run. Now, I can't say if silver is going to shoot up from here and then hurtle back down, but this is a really good example of just how different the dynamics are between gold and silver. Now, it's not my place to tell anyone what to do. I'm not trying to do that, but I think everyone should at least think of gold and silver a little bit differently, because they are. You don't plan on any long-term hold doubling every few years, not gold, not silver, but gold just did it. It doubled in 2, and that's pretty amazing. Well, silver just did it in less than 1, and I'm saying another 30% isn't unrealistic. Now, I'll spare you the final chart. We've all seen this before. Silver moves up faster when it starts to run, and it falls faster when it gives it up. So if you see silver as a long-term hold, I get it. But part of owning silver is also that wild card in the mix as well. Or maybe it's a jack in the box. You wind and wind and wind for 30 years or 13 years. Nobody knows. And then bang, it goes a little crazy. And that is what's happening right now. So you should be ready for some part of it to act differently than your typical get it and forget it asset. And let's call it good there. Let us know what you think. I'm curious where you see silver going if you're into it. I mentioned earlier in the year that I saw $60 as a conservative target. That could easily turn into 80 if the momentum is right. And I know that's a big range, 30% delta. I guess that's the jack-in-the-box effect with silver. You just never know for sure. Let us know what you think, though. And while you're in the comments, be sure to hit that like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you want to hear more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.